Hey, welcome back. We've got a couple things we want to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so. One is Keith Olbermann. We've got to work together to get Keith Olbermann off the air. I think that this is the type of person that is causing the strife in this country, the division in this country, for whatever reason, because I guess he's on the left side and he's on NBC. He gets to actually participate in NFL broadcasts on NBC. And so let's listen to what Olbermann had to say yesterday about the new senator that's going to be elected today from Massachusetts, to show you just how out of control and over the top this gentleman is. And we've all got to contact NBC News. That's 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. That's NBC News, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. 10112. You can remember that. They got a show, 30 Rock. NBC News, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. We need to write letters and get this guy off the air. Listen.
Here's the second of tonight's quick comments. Lost in the angst about Obama and Coakley is the little recognized real headline of this vote. You have heard Scott Brown speculating, talking out of his bare bottom, about whether or not the President of the United States was born out of wedlock. You have heard Scott Brown respond to the shout from a supporter that they should stick a curling iron into Ms. Coakley's rectum with the answer, "We can do this." You may not have heard Scott Brown support a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage or describing two women having a child as being, quote, just not normal. You may not have heard Scott Brown associating himself with the Tea Party movement, perhaps the saddest collection of people who don't want to admit why they really hate, since the racists of the South in the 60s insisted they were really just concerned about states' rights. You may not have heard Scott Brown voting against funding paid leaves of absence for Massachusetts Red Cross workers who had gone to New York to help after 9/11. In short, in Scott Brown, we have an irresponsible, homophobic, racist, reactionary, ex-new model, teabagging supporter of violence against women and against politicians with whom he disagrees. In any other time in our history, this man would have...
Can you back that up to that point right there, Tripp, in what we have with Scott Brown, like the last 8 or 10 seconds? Approximately.
In short, in Scott Brown, we have an irresponsible, homophobic, racist, reactionary, ex-new model, teabagging supporter of violence against women and against politicians with whom he disagrees. In any other time in our history, this man would have been laughed off the stage as an unqualified and a disaster in the making by the most conservative of conservatives. Instead, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is close to sending this bad joke to the Senate of the United States.
All right, folks, now let's listen to what Keith Olbermann on Joe Scarborough, on his own network, the same network. Scarborough Twittered people last night, totally disgusted with what Olbermann said. Let's listen to what Scarborough had to say this morning on his show, Morning Joe.
Let's look at two guys that have won big the past 6 months. You got Bob McDonnell in Virginia. They tried to paint him as a right-wing crazy nut from Pat Robertson's university. Yeah. He flipped it away because he flipped it away. Now, Scott Brown, they tried to do the same thing, said horrible things about him. A certain person on this network, whose name will not be mentioned, went on a tirade, the likes of which, sad and pathetic. It doesn't work.
Likes of which is sad and pathetic. Keith Olbermann obviously is a very sad and pathetic human being. He obviously needs some sort of 12-step program. I'm sure there's one in L.A. that would suit Keith just fine. But what we don't need is we don't need this kind of vile, irresponsible, over-the-top, vilifying, hateful. This guy is a racist. He is a hater. He is everything that he talks about other people being. And he gets away with this on NBC, owned by General Electric. We can do something about Keith Olbermann. We need to use Keith Olbermann as an example. In Massachusetts, we are setting an example. We are taking out the Democratic Senate placeholder. We are taking out the woman running from the Senate for the Democratic Party in a seat that's been occupied by the Kennedy family or their placeholders for over 60 years. We are sending a message. Now we need to send a message to the media that we are not going to put up with anymore this kind of crazy, hateful, this finger pointing of calling regular citizens of the United States, the good, tax-paying, hardworking, middle-class people that essentially voted President Obama into office, did not like what they saw. Massachusetts voted for President Obama by 26-point majority. 26 points. It was a landslide in Massachusetts. The same people that voted for Ed Brooke as the first black Republican senator in the U.S. Senate since Reconstruction for 2 terms, from 1966 to 1978, a black was elected U.S. Senator from Massachusetts. This is not a state that is full of people that won't vote for people of color. And so Olbermann trying to suggest that the people of Massachusetts are racist, small-minded. They've got the first openly gay congressman, 2 of them, Barney Frank and Jerry Studs, out of a 12-member delegation that's now 11 members, openly gay, elected repeatedly from the state of Massachusetts. This is not a state that is looking at the color of people's skin. They're not looking at their sexual preferences. They're not looking at anything like that. They are evaluating policy. They voted for a man running for president that said he would not be partisan, that he would not tear our country down, that he would usher in a new era, that he would not have the special interests which involved in getting between what the government should be doing and what people need. There has been nothing of the sort from this administration. It has been the opposite of what President Obama campaigned to do. The people of Massachusetts recognize that. They are sending a message. It is considered to be one of the greatest upsets in the history of politics. I would only think that maybe Jimmy Carter winning the White House, some would say President Obama winning the White House, would have been of equal measure, equal proportion. But this is certainly a major upset. And to have an NBC paid employee, a General Electric paid employee, Keith Olbermann, someone that actually is on NFL broadcasts each and every week for the NBC network representing the National Football League. We cannot have this kind of discourse in this country. We need to send NBC a message. You can send that message to NBC News, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. That's NBC News, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. We must let the media know that we are not going to allow them to say things about us, the voters of this country, the people that pay taxes in this country, the people that elected President Obama as President of the United States. We are not going to be called these names. We are not going to allow our mainstream media, or what used to be, obviously no longer the mainstream media, that we're not going to allow them to employ sick people like Keith Olbermann and have them spew their hate over our channels on a regular nightly basis. So that's NBC News, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, New York, New York, 10112. Let's do something about Keith Olbermann.